I thought it is important to start a new series of live engagements on Facebook with supporters, members, and generally interested members of the public that are on social media with regards to what the views of the African radical economic transformation is about several topics, but especially concentrating on the recent political developments. This afternoon, I would like to address a few of those issues. The first one that I want to address is the terrible, tragic fire that broke out in a condemned building in Marshalltown, where 74 people who stayed in that condemned building sadly lost their lives. Let me immediately convey Areta's deepest sympathy and condolences to the families and the loved ones of those who lost their lives so tragically and so violently. It is truly sad that this situation has developed in our nation. It is tragic that people are living under such circumstances, such absolutely inhumane circumstances, in parts of our country. But let us be honest. It is also part of the consequence of what we as a nation and our government has allowed to happen. Because this problem of large numbers of people living in condemned buildings in overcrowded situations, also to a very significant extent can be related to our lack of proper border control, to the lack of actually executing international migratory legislation. It is simply not tenable and acceptable to have illegal, undocumented foreigners coming in their thousands and in fact in their millions to live and to participate in the economy of our country. Especially not under the current circumstances, where our economy is in dire straits, where we see a collapse of so many of our economic institutions, where we've got the highest unemployment rate in the world, and the biggest gap between the rich and the poor. I've recently seen some very disturbing statistics of the youth in our country, up to 60% being unemployed. Now, under those circumstances, it is certainly not tenable that we have millions of people who are not South African citizens and who are not documented and are clearly illegal in the country, demanding also services and drawing on the scarce resources that are evidently not at all enough even to take care of our own South African citizens. Under those circumstances, it is the most rational and correct position to say that illegal, undocumented foreigners will have to be apprehended and will have to be deported from our country. This is not xenophobic. It is not anti-African at all. It is an expression and an articulation of the reality of our South African situation, of the reality of what is possible if we want to create a better life for our people. And it is truly, surely so that throughout the world, illegal, undocumented foreigners are not simply allowed to participate in the economy of nations and to live in those countries. We need to protect the sovereignty of our South African nation. We need to protect our borders. We need to protect our people. And if this is done properly, the conditions under which so many people are now living in the most inhumane of circumstances will also be possibly to be addressed in a proper way within the legal context of international law and within the legal context of the full carrying out of migratory legislation. Therefore, Areta is clear that we've contained in our 10-point plan to save our country, right there in point number 8, the need that illegal, undocumented foreigners must be apprehended, they must be processed in terms of international migratory legislation, and ultimately, they must be deported. We stand by that unapologetically. And we are convinced if this policy is properly implemented, it will be far more humane. And it will also be far better for the majority of South African citizens than the current unacceptable situation that we have. But of course, that also means that our South African police service, and especially those who work as border control police, will have to do their duties properly. Similarly, our Department of Home Affairs will have to carry out their duties properly. And the known incidents of corruption that is all over told about, and sometimes there are even whistleblowers who speak about it, must be dealt with. Those in our Department of Home Affairs, those in our police service who are corrupt, who allow illegal undocumented foreigners to come into our country to bribe their way in, must be dealt with harshly. The police who commit themselves also in a criminal way must be apprehended. They must be arrested, and they must pay the consequences for their actions. Let me now also deal with a second topic which I believe is foremost in many of the minds of South African citizens. And that is the ongoing disastrous Palapala Farmgate criminal saga. And the way in which the cover-up of the Palapala Farmgate and the way in which Cyril Ramaphosa is being protected has been undermining and destroying our state institutions. I've warned right from the beginning that the way in which the police are not doing their job, the National Prosecuting Authority dragging the feet, the ANC in the National Assembly using their majority to suppress the very good report of the independent panel, where there were 3 eminent legal minds who found that Ramaphosa has a serious prima facie case to answer. That all of those issues, including also the manner in which Ramaphosa suspended the public protector after he received 32 seminal questions, asking him about the critical issues regarding the Palapala Farmgate scandal. All of that indicate that our state institutions are being hollowed out and destroyed by Ramaphosa's actions, and by those around him who continue to protect him and prevent him from being held accountable for his actions. I have warned, and so has also some of my fellow comrades like Tsepu Khadima. We have warned that when the legal system in this country, the Northern Gauteng High Court, decided to close the Ramaphosa CR17 bank accounts and cover up some very serious allegations that have been made, that there was bribes paid in order to make sure that Ramaphosa will be elected as the president of the ANC, and of course then subsequently also as president of South Africa. That cover-up was the beginning of the rot that was setting in. And that rot would eventually spread through all the state institutions. That is exactly what has happened now. And Areta is deeply concerned that we now need to draw a line and say enough is enough. Therefore, we support the position of the progressive political parties in the National Assembly who were part of that committee, that the arrogant governor of the Reserve Bank treated with so much disdain, and their insistence that they are now going to go to court to demand that they should be able to have access to the report of the Reserve Bank about the Palapala Farmgate scandal. I was absolutely appalled by the arrogance and even the manner in which the governor spoke to our public representatives, our members of parliament in the National Assembly. Evidently, this man thinks he is above the law. Evidently, he is prepared to break all regulations and laws in order to protect his paymaster, the man who is keeping him in a job. Now, this kind of situation we simply cannot allow to continue. And therefore, Areta is standing firm that Cyril Ramaphosa must be held accountable for all the criminal acts that have taken place there at Palapala. The assault of a domestic worker, the illegal possession of huge amounts of foreign currency, the illegal crossing of borders into Namibia, the abduction of those who were apparently involved in the theft of those dollars, the torture of those people, the fact that police resources were used in order to pursue this money that has been lost, while no formal legal case, no formal case had been opened with the South African Police Service. None of these issues that I refer to now has been denied, nor can they be denied. But they have been smoothed over. They have been swept under the carpet. They have been kept in an unaccountable and unacceptable way. And they were dealt with in such a manner that we have now reached the point where we clearly have become a banana republic, where the law and the implications of our legislation no longer is taken seriously. In fact, the way in which the South African Reserve Bank has made findings about the Palapala Farmgate dollars has set precedents that will now create an environment where it will be almost impossible to apprehend anyone with illegal foreign currency in their possession in the future. This is certainly not tenable. Let me address the third issue, and that is the many coups that we see in parts of Africa today. In West Africa, in Mali, in Burkina Faso, in Niger. These coups are an expression of the outrage and the frustration of a younger generation of the populace in those countries. And while one would not necessarily be eager to support military coups against real democratic governments, it must be stated that those elections that have taken place in those nations were clearly sham, and that imperialist nations, and with specific reference to France, had a most corrosive and corrupt influence on elections where evidently the imperialist former colonial and probably still new colonial master of those countries has made sure that those who they want to see in power were kept in power. There were no democracies. And the super exploitation of the resources of those nations were absolutely outrageous. So the position of the African Radical Economic Transformation Alliance is that we support those coups. We understand the reasons for them, and we can see that they are certainly popular, and that the populace wanted that change. This is an important message to the imperialists who continue to exploit developing nations and especially Africa. It is an untenable situation. It cannot continue forever. It must come to an end. And we applaud those courageous young military officers who have decided to take the necessary action to bring the injustice, the outrage, the exploitation, the continuing imperialist control over their nations, finally to an end. Lastly, I want to talk about our domestic political situation, especially about the formation of various political parties, of which ARETA, of course, is one, and also the more recent formation of ACT, of the African Congress for Transformation. I've been engaged by many concerned progressive comrades who said, why don't you, as ARETA and ACT, come together? And of course, I fully abide by that principle. Let me then also state immediately that ARETA was formed quite a while ago, on the 23rd of February of this year. We were right from the beginning clear that we intended to form ourselves from the original status as a non-profit organization to a fully fledged political party. But we first wanted to see what support we will get from a growing membership and what the intentions of our membership would be, whether we should form a political party. And indeed, we did get huge support. ARETA's membership stands at the moment at 350,000 signed up members. And our membership and supporters, when we consulted them, told us that they wanted us to be fully involved in the politics of the country, to be able to engage with other political parties as an equal. Thus that they wanted us to register as a political party. And that is exactly what we did. We registered as a political party. We've received our certificate from the Independent Electoral Commission. And ARETA is functioning throughout all 9 provinces of the country, with the full intention to participate both in the provincial and in the national elections of 2024 as a fully fledged, progressive, left political party, with a clear ideology, with a foundation of the ideology of radical economic transformation. Now, we've always said that we would love to see all comrades, all members of political environments in our country to join us. We were always open with our doors also to those who in the last week formed ACT. And we will continue to keep our doors open. But at the same time, it must be emphasized that the creation of ARETA was long before ACT came about, and that ARETA has a clear ideological grounding. Part of that grounding is a commitment for uniting all the left progressive forces in our country. And that is why ARETA has come out so strongly in engaging with the UDM, with the ATM, with the Pan-Africanist Congress, with the economic freedom fighters, and we will certainly also engage with ACT. But one thing must be certain. ARETA as a political party has been established. We've got a mandate from our membership. We are clear about our commitment to work for unity, and we will continue to exist and articulate those views and play our role in the body politic of this country. We will not play dirty. We will not try to undermine any other political party. We will not tell lies about other political parties and their formation. And that is why the membership of ARETA, and with specific reference to the board, the National Working Board of ARETA, have been so disappointed by some of the statements that had been made by Comrade Ace Magashule when he said, incorrectly, that ARETA was supposed to have stayed a non-profit organization, and in fact that there was an agreement that ARETA would be a non-profit organization and therefore not become a political party. That was not a correct statement. That was an untruth. Comrade Ace, everyone else who's been part of the formation of ARETA and who's been informed step by step by all our intentions, in all honesty, have to acknowledge that. Simultaneously, I want to express my disappointment that there were some of those who are now apparently members of ACT who have decided to go to the ARETA WhatsApp groups, our social media WhatsApp groups and other groups, copy the names of our membership, of our supporters, of people who are in WhatsApp groups of ARETA, and without their consent, without any consultation, move those members also to WhatsApp groups and social media platforms of ACT. It is unnecessary. It is an unnecessary provocative act. I spoke to Comrade Ace Magashule about it yesterday. He agreed with me that it was wrong. He said he will speak to those responsible. I'm glad for the positive response that he gave. And I want to express once again my sincere hope that we as progressive political parties, progressive South Africans who truly must bring change, who must bring an end to this rogue, failed ANC government, who must work together, who must forge unity, that we will all behave in a politically mature fashion, that we will care about the way in which we respect each other, that we will tell the truth, that we will appreciate the sacrifices that so many comrades have made for our liberation, that we will not disregard anyone, that we will acknowledge the contribution of everyone who has made a contribution to the liberation of this country and also to the position of standing up against the selling out of the Ramaphosa regime. I did an extensive interview with Sunday World yesterday, which will be broadcasted a little bit later this afternoon as part of a new podcast series that they have. I urge all of you who are watching me in this live Facebook interaction to also watch that interview, to hear the positive outreach that I make to every progressive South African. And let me conclude by once again stating that we will never be able to bring about the true fundamental change that we need to see in South Africa. The honest transformation, the need to bring an end to the exploitation of the majority of black and especially African people. The need to clearly address the issue of white monopoly capitalism and comprador black capitalism and the way in which that relates to imperialism and the exploitation of our people, not just over decades, but over centuries. None of that we will succeed in if we do not have a clear understanding of the ideology that should underpin our actions. One of the biggest disasters that befell the African National Congress was that the ANC killed ideology, didn't take serious the original ideology that led to the formation of the ANC in 1912, and sold it out for self-aggrandizement and enrichment. That has to come to an end. But it will only come to an end if we are clear about the ideological foundation on which we build the future. And that ideological foundation is not just to get rid of racism, important as it is, but also to ensure full economic liberation. And full economic liberation in our country must be underpinned by radical economic transformation. And the foundation stone of radical economic transformation is the return of the land to the indigenous owners, the original owners of the land, expropriation of land without compensation. I will continue this discussion in the days to come in live broadcasts such as this one that I'm doing today. But I thought these few topics that I've addressed this afternoon are of importance for us to consider. And it is important that we get clarity about them in order to be able to guide ourselves in the very volatile and very difficult political environment in which we as South Africans find ourselves today. I wish you a great Monday. And of course, as Areta always says, the struggle continues. We will not waver. We will not rest until we achieved full liberation, which must be accompanied by full economic liberation and the implementation of a basic but strong program of radical economic transformation. I sign off with that slogan that has become unanimous with Areta. Aluta continua.